So let's talk about negative thinking. We all have it. In fact, it's natural for most of us to go to the negative before we even begin to think about the positive. In fact, they say that 70% of our thinking on average is in the negative, which seems to me awfully high, but I can also understand that when you're living in fear, when you're living in self-doubt, when you're living in that uncertainty, or the VUCA world that is volatile, uncertain, and complicated, this is a really big piece on what we need to do to change that up. Now, for many of us, we had role models around us who were very negative. And I can tell you that my background had a lot of that going on. And there was a lot of naysaying too, when you were thinking about some brilliant new idea. Oh, that'll never work. So you start to think negatively about that. Or you start to get comments on your looks. Your nose is too big, your belly's too fat. You get to thinking about yourself as not quite the perfect being. So therefore, negative thinking takes over on that level. In your job, you may have felt that, you were getting criticism. Let's face it, feedback in the workplace is not the healthiest of situations because most people don't have a first clue on how to do that well, because it starts with positivity. And frequently, when we're getting some kind of performance review, it's the negative. Here's the things you did wrong, long before you get to the things about what could be right. When we think about the negative critic in our heads, the one that comes down on you, that tells you you're stupid, that tells you you're a failure, that you're a loser, that you'll never do well, whatever the case may be. And there are extremes of that, by the way. But when you hear a negative voice in your head, here's what I want you to think about. Who's doing the talking? I guarantee you that there was some messages planted at an earlier stage of your life, and whether it was with parents or well-meaning bosses or friends, there are things that have been implanted. I call them the memes because, they tend to perpetuate. So when you're thinking about negative thinking, catching yourself in the act, wow, there you go again, you might want to start thinking the opposite, the positive way. Because the negative thinking will continue to pull you down. It won't open the world up for you. It closes it down. And when we are caught in that terrible spiral of being told, frankly, you're no good, you'll never amount to much. God knows that was the message I got when I was growing up. You'll never amount to much. But I like to tell the story of standing in front of a group of FBI agents and looking up at the ceiling and asking my father, who was the one who planted that meme, what do you think now, Dad? Because the truth of the matter is, that's not me. That's not me. So when you hear the negative voices in your head, is it really you? Does it really apply? Because I guarantee you that those messages are just habits. So change the habit, change the language that you use on yourself, develop some kind of self-compassion and kindness, forgiveness for who you are. We're all flawed human beings, let's face it. None of us are perfect, and God knows I don't want to be perfect, even if I do have perfectionist tendencies. I have a tendency to kind of go the whole hog on that. But one thing I have learned, self-compassion. When I go off the rails a little bit, I can come back and say, you know what, tomorrow you'll do better. If I feel like I want to slam my side of my head with a 2x4 because, well, you should have known better. Well, you didn't have enough information. You change the tone of voice that you speak to yourself in. So as you're going through this section, think about how you speak to yourself negatively. Think about how you can reframe that to put in more love, more kindness, more compassion, more forgiveness. Because when we put that into our experience, it multiplies. And I can tell you from experience, my experience, the multiplication of those particular forms is extraordinary. And you become a much more loving person. And of course, I like to say that when you love yourself, other people will love you more. So give that some thought when you're thinking about how negative language is impacting your life.